Tina sits back in her chair with her legs crossed. She still has that famous smile that's sharp as a knife, even at 83 years old. The person asking questions smiles nervously, then finally asks, "Tina, you've worked with famous people. You've traveled all around the world. You've seen everything. Tell the truth. Were there ever singers who really made you interested?" Tina throws her head back and laughs. That rough musical laugh that filled big concert halls just as much as her singing voice ever did. "Baby, are you really asking me that?" Of course there were. I spent so many years shaking my body in sparkly outfits and high heels, standing next to the most good-looking men in music. You think I didn't have feelings? You think I didn't feel the excitement? Please. She leans in now, her eyes shining, her voice getting lower like she's sharing a secret. Look, I was always professional. I always gave people a great show. But I'm not going to sit here at 83 years old and pretend I didn't daydream. There were men whose voices went right into my bones. Men whose smiles made me want to throw every rule out the window. On stage, I was full of energy. Off stage, honey, sometimes I was stopping myself from letting everything go wild. She smirks without apologizing. Don't look shocked. I was the woman who sang Proud Mary in fancy outfits and heels night after night. I didn't get up there pretending to be perfect. I knew exactly how much attraction and hard work were in this business. And I wasn't blind. Some of those men, Lord, they made it really hard to keep my hands where they should be. Tina winks. The playfulness still alive in her even now. So yeah, 6 of them. 6 men who made me weak, who made me want to step off the stage and straight into trouble. And if I had, well, let's just say the extra performance would have been a whole lot more interesting. One MC Jagger. Tina smirks, shaking her head like she's about to tell something she's kept secret for so many years. MC Jagger, Lord have mercy. That man was pure wildness wrapped in tight leather pants. I knew Mick back when we were both young and wanting success. And let me tell you, he learned more than a few of those hip movements from watching me. But watching him, who? That boy moved like every bone in his body was up to something naughty. She leans in, her voice full of playfulness. We had chemistry, the kind you can't fake, the kind that makes the air in a room feel sticky. People still talk about that Live Aid performance we did in '85. And baby, they should. We were pulling clothes off, bumping and moving together like the world was about to end. And the truth, that wasn't practiced. That was just us. 2 people who could barely keep their hands off each other once the music started. Tina stops, biting her lip like she's pretending to be shocked. Now, I'll say this much. Mick had a wildness to him that made you think twice because you knew if you went down that road, you weren't sleeping. You were surviving. He'd have kept me up all night, jumping around, laughing, sweating, making noise till the sun came up. And honey, I can't lie, there were nights I thought about letting him. Her eyes get narrower, remembering. Being backstage with Mick was its own kind of concert. He'd be walking back and forth, jumpy with energy, humming a tune, shaking his hips even when there was no music. Then he'd flash me that smile, you know, the one. Like he already had a secret, like he was challenging me to come find out. And I'd think, if I follow him into that dressing room, I'm not coming out the same woman. She laughs deep and low. Mick was pure temptation because he wasn't pretending to be anything else. He didn't come at you with flowers and sweet words. He came at you with fire. He was unpredictable. One minute he'd be telling you some story about blues musicians and London clubs. The next minute he'd be dancing on a table, shirt wide open, sweat flying everywhere. And I swear that energy was like a drug. You didn't just watch him. You felt him in your bones, in your skin, in places you weren't supposed to admit in public. Tina shakes her head, her smile turning sneaky. And the way he touched you, even innocent touches, Lord, they didn't feel innocent. A hand on your back, a brush of his fingers when he passed you a microphone. It carried sparks. He had this restless electricity, and if you got too close, you picked it up yourself. I used to leave rooms with Mick buzzing like I'd had too much champagne, and sometimes all he'd done was hold my hand. Her voice gets softer, more thoughtful, though the heat doesn't fade. You see, Mick was the storm and the calm. He could be wild and untamed one moment, then sit down quiet, almost gentle like a boy who just figured out how much power he had and didn't quite know what to do with it. That's the Mick people didn't always see. The one who'd look at you, really look and make you feel like maybe, just maybe he could stop the world if he wanted to. And honey, for a woman like me, that was almost more dangerous than the wildness. She leans back, letting the memory roll through her. There was a pull between us, no doubt. Every performance, every practice, every accidental touch, it was a dance. We never really stopped. People ask if we ever crossed that line. The truth, we didn't have to. The tension alone was enough to set the world on fire. But Lord knows if I'd given in, that fire would have burned hotter than anything we ever sang on stage. Her laugh comes again, naughty and knowing. Mick wasn't just a man. He was a storm. Loud, messy, impossible to ignore. And that's what made him so tempting. You didn't want to tame him. You wanted to get swept up and see where it carried you. And with him, you knew it would carry you straight through the night, straight through the sunrise, maybe even straight through your own good intentions. Her voice drops to almost a whisper, like she's sharing one last dangerous secret. We never crossed that line, but we danced on top of it, spun circles around it, set fire to it, and laughed while we did it. If I'd ever given in, well, let's just say the Rolling Stones wouldn't have been the only ones still rocking in the morning. And believe me, that man had enough rhythm to keep the music going long after the sun came up. 2. David Bowie. Tina's eyes get soft, then sparkle as though she's remembering something she probably shouldn't say out loud. David Bowie. Lord, that man wasn't just a singer. He was a planet all his own. I used to look at him and think, who gave you permission to be that beautiful and that strange at the same time? He walked into a room like he'd written the rules of attraction. And baby, we were all just trying to keep up. She laughs, throwing her head back. Bowie had this way of looking at you, like he already knew what you were hiding. And I don't mean secrets. I mean the things you didn't even know you wanted until he pulled them out of you with those eyes. He wasn't loud. He wasn't pushy. He didn't need to be. Just one smile, one little tilt of the head, and suddenly you were imagining whole stories you'd never dared tell anyone before. Her voice dips, smoky and playful. You got to understand, I was used to men trying to impress me. Loud suits, louder voices the whole show. But Bowie, he didn't try. He didn't need to. He could stand in the corner of a room, silent, watching, and every woman in the place would be restless, wondering what it would take to make him notice her. And when he did notice you, baby, it was like being lit on fire from the inside out. Tina leans in, voice lowering to a purr. And the voice, my God, it wasn't just singing. It was like velvet and fire, like someone running their hands over you without even touching you. You felt it everywhere. If he'd ever leaned in close and whispered one of his song words in my ear, I would have followed him right out of the studio and not looked back once. She stays on the thought, eyes narrowing as if she's challenging herself to say more. The thing with David was he mixed every line. Was he boy? Was he man? Was he angel? Was he devil? The answer was yes. All of it all at once. And that was the thrill. Being around him made you feel like the whole world had more colors than you ever knew existed. And I'll admit, more than once I wondered what it would feel like to see those colors in private. She shakes her head, a sneaky grin creeping back. David was temptation dressed in sparkles and mystery. He made you want to break your own rules. Not because he asked, but because he made you believe breaking them would set you free. And Lord, I came close more than once. Let's just say if I'd let myself go, Ziggy Stardust wouldn't have been the only one from another world that night. And, honey, I'd have been more than happy to take that trip with him. 3. Prince. Tina's lips curve into a smile and she almost shakes her head like she's scolding herself. Prince. Lord, that man was 5 foot nothing but carried himself like he was a giant. He didn't walk into a room. He glided like he was floating on his own rhythm. And baby, every woman in the room felt it. He didn't need to say a word. Just that look, that sly little smile. And you already knew you were in trouble. She leans forward, eyes flashing. Prince had this energy, electricity, pure and simple. Standing next to him was like standing too close to a live wire. You wanted to touch, but you knew you'd get burned. And honestly, half the thrill was knowing the fire was coming. He played guitar like it was a lover, sang like every word was a sin, and moved like the world was his private bedroom. And, Lord, I would have signed up for detention. Her laugh turns low and smoky. You know what else about Prince? He had this stillness. He could sit there quiet, not moving a muscle, and still every eye in the room was glued to him. That's when you realized the man didn't need volume. He was the volume. And when he finally did move, honey, the ground shook. The way he held that guitar between his legs. The way he'd slide into a note like he was sliding into something forbidden. It wasn't music. It was foreplay. Tina smirks, fanning herself dramatically. There were nights I shared a stage with him. And I had to remind myself, girl, you're here to sing, not to misbehave. Because with Prince, every glance, every gesture was an invitation. And Lord help me, I wanted to RSVP. Yes, every single time. 4. Marvin Gaye. Tina's smile gets softer, her voice getting low, almost like she's purring the words. Marvin Gaye. Lord, that man didn't just sing love songs. He was the love song. I swear, every note that came out of his mouth felt like it was aimed straight at your skin. He could stand on stage, barely moving, and still make you feel like he was touching you everywhere at once. She shakes her head slowly, eyes shining at the memory. I remember the first time I heard him sing Let's Get It On live. Baby, the whole room went still. It wasn't a song. It was a seduction. He had the kind of voice that made women forget where they were sitting, forget they were with their husbands, forget everything except that moment. And, I'll be honest, I was right there with them, wondering what it would feel like if he'd sung it to me. Just me in a dark room where nobody else could hear. Tina chuckles, that low, throaty laugh of hers. Marvin had this softness like velvet, but underneath it there was this raw, hungry edge. You could hear it in the way he stretched out a note, the way he let his voice break just enough to sound like he was begging. And Lord, I used to imagine what it would feel like to give him what he was begging for. She leans back, sighing dramatically. You know, some men sing songs. Marvin made you live inside them. You didn't just listen, you surrendered. And if I'd ever let him catch me alone after a show, honey, I doubt I'd have walked out of that room the same woman who went in. Marvin Gaye wasn't just music. He was temptation in stereo. 5. James Brown. Tina's laugh explodes. Wild and wicked. James Brown, the godfather of soul. Lord, that man didn't just perform, he erupted. Sharing a stage with him was like standing next to a volcano. Hot, dangerous, and you never knew when it was going to blow. He'd drop into a split, scream into the mic, sweat pouring down like rain. And I just stand there thinking, how in the world is a woman supposed to behave herself with all that going on? She leans forward, lowering her voice, but the grin on her lips says everything. James had this rawness. He didn't try to polish it, didn't try to make it pretty. He gave you grit, sweat, fire, and baby, it was sexy as hell. The way he moved. The way he threw himself across the stage like the music had possessed him. It wasn't just performance. It was passion. Pure, unfiltered passion. And standing next to that, you couldn't help but feel it crawling right under your skin. Tina shakes her head, fanning herself like she's back under the stage lights. I'll be honest, there were times I wanted to forget the music altogether. Watching James up close, that energy, that power. It made you imagine things, made you wonder what he was like when the spotlight was off, when the mic was down, when that fire was aimed at just one woman instead of a whole arena. Her grin turned sly, wicked. If I'd ever let James Brown take me off stage, I swear to you, the show would have gone on all night long. No band, no crowd, just sweat, rhythm, and a whole lot of noise. 6. Al Green. Tina's eyes flutter half-closed, and her voice drops low like she's confessing something only meant for late-night whispers. Al Green, Lord have mercy. That man was silk poured into sound. He didn't just sing love songs. He lived inside them. Every note he sang felt like warm hands on your skin. Every lyric like it was meant only for you. She pauses, smiling like she's replaying a memory. I remember the first time I heard him do Let's Stay Together live. I swear the air in the room changed. Women weren't just listening. They were surrendering. And I was right there with them, thinking if he sings this to me one more time, I might just forget my own name. Her laugh is husky, teasing. Al had this softness, this way of making you feel safe. But at the same time, he was dangerous because that voice of his didn't ask you for anything. It just took you under. He'd stretch a word, slide through a phrase, and suddenly you weren't in control anymore. He was, and I'll be honest, that thought thrilled me more than it scared me. Tina leans forward, eyes glinting with mischief. If Al Green had ever pulled me aside, leaned in real close, and hummed a single note in my ear, honey, the night would have gone straight off the rails. No lights, no stage, just two people lost in that slow, sweet rhythm. And I'd have let him lead me every step of the way. She grins wide, wicked, and unashamed. Al wasn't just a singer. He was temptation in a three-piece suit. And Lord knows if I'd ever let myself fall, I might never have gotten back up again.